Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I hope we're all well and thank you very much for tuning in. This video is the fourth in our CRJ tutorial series following volume 3 of the documentation supplied with the add-on. In this video we are going to commence the taxi out and finally get airborne as we run through the takeoff procedure and the initial climb out. So, first of all, we left at the end of our last episode shutting down the APU. So before we do anything else, let's just double check that power is being supplied properly from the engines. So we checked also that the generators are supplying power. We already checked that, that's fine. Now we'll just check the DC electrical page and just make sure that the AC power that's being supplied to the transformer rectifier units here is also being supplied to the DC buses here. There should be no power coming from both batteries at this point, as all the power is coming from the engines. So that all looks good, and we are ready to run our taxi check. Okie dokie. So, first item on the check is to make sure our flaps are set correctly. We can do that by going down to our flaps lever here and setting that to 8. This selector works quite well with the mouse wheel, so just bear that in mind. Don't try and drag it as you would perhaps expect to do. We'll then run a flight control check. So we'll select the flight control page of the ICAS and we'll go full left aileron, full right, full up on the elevator, full down and neutral, full left on the rudder, full right and then neutral once again. Okay. Now we want to set our trim. Now we know from our EFB we can check the performance page. Our takeoff trim should be set to 7.8. So we'll go back over here and you will need to obviously bind this to your controller. We're going to set that to 7.8 there. Okay. So that is in the green range too, which is good. You can see now our slaps and flaps have deployed to 8. We'll double check the thrust reversers are in fact armed, which they are. We'll also just now have a quick scan over all of our main flight instruments. Make sure everything looks okay here and that there are no errors displayed. We'll also just go to our FMS real quick and we'll bring up our flight plan here. Sorry, legs page on both sides. And we'll also go to our MFD menu and we'll use this control to set our window here to on, showing our next few waypoints here on the MFD. This is obviously personal preference. You could do it, set it up as you wish. But having this to on is just sometimes quite helpful so you can see your next few waypoints and your destination. Okay, so we are looking good then. Let's have a quick look at the radio page on the FMS as well. Make sure this is set up correctly. It is. We set that earlier. Just want to double check this is in manual on the left hand side. We don't want this nav1 frequency changing as we're going to be using that for departure. And nav2 can be set to auto. We're not actually using that, so we'll leave it at that for now. We'll double check the brake temperature. So bring up the status page on the ICAS and we'll just check the brake temperature is indicating in the green, which it is, and that is good to go. We'll also hit the status page button once again and make sure these messages are now boxed. Okay, so we are now ready to do our taxi out. Let's just turn on our taxi lights. We'll turn them on now. Normally it'd be advisable to turn those on as you are turning away from stand. But again, just to keep the workload down for this tutorial, we'll do that now. We'll also release the parking brake and we'll get underway here. As you can see, the CRJ is going to start rolling almost straight away here. So we'll just turn that towards the taxiway. You can see in the manual, we are going to taxi on straight down here along the side of the apron on taxiway Delta. We're going to be following that all the way down to the runway itself. And we'll be taking a right onto Echo. And then onto runway 06. So on apron here, we want to make sure we keep our speeds down quite low, between 5 and 10 knots whilst we are on the apron. Obviously there may be other traffic and personnel moving around here. And we could just check out the beautiful scenery here that Aerosoft have put together for us at this airport. Again, if you didn't download this already, I highly, highly recommend it. It is a fantastic add-on for zero cost. So you can see Delta and 06 is indicated over here to the left. And again, keep an eye on the speed here. This aircraft is very keen to run away from you if you don't keep it in check on the taxi. And as we come up to this turn here, we can actually see, well, not just yet, but as we come up to this turn here, we should be able to see the Aerosoft building off to the side here. They are obviously located in Paderborn in real life, so they have actually modeled their offices in here, which is a very, very cool little feature. And let's give them a wave and thank them for this fantastic add-on. Alright, so for this turn we're slowing down to around 10 knots. It will start going downhill here as well as we get around the corner, so we just want to make sure we keep an eye on our speed. Signage is indicating we are still on Delta, and if we want to continue on Delta, we need to go to the left. Okay, so once we get round this corner here, we're going to come to a full stop and just run our before takeoff checklist. Again, just to keep workload down, as this may well be your first flight in the CRJ. I'm still fairly new to it myself, so it's yeah, definitely handy just to take things a little bit slower to begin with, just so you can get used to all the checks and making sure everything is set up perfectly.
The captain has advised that we are now cleared for takeoff.
Okay, so let's break down to a complete stop here, and we're going to stop at this hold short line here. Okay, let's turn the parking brake on, so we're not going to roll backwards. This is on a slight gradient here. Okay, so let's run our before takeoff checklist. So we want to turn our lights and strobes to on, and the fuel crossflow to manual. These are both on the overhead panel. So we'll turn our strobes on and our landing lights on as well. Now, it may vary the procedure for when you turn these on in different airlines. However, just to keep the workload down again, we're going to just turn them on now as we're entering an active runway. We'll also turn the cross-flow override on to manual. This is now lit up and indicating manual. We'll double check our anti-ice panel, make sure this is all set correctly, which it is. We turned our anti-ice on earlier, as well as our probes. Window heat is also on low. We can also just quickly test the continuous ignition here. Make sure that does come on. And check on the ICAS display. Cont ignition is displayed. That is all good. Flight attendants are indeed advised, as you just heard their announcement. We'll just double check our TCAS is set up correctly. So going to the radio tuning panels here, we'll just press the TCAS button. Make sure above is selected. We don't need below for the takeoff. And we'll leave it in automatic mode. We'll also go down a little bit further here and set our transponder to 1. It's going to send our position and altitude to the ATC, and that is good. Now, the next item is the radar and terrain display. Unfortunately, this is not simulated as yet in this aircraft, so we're not going to do anything with that. However, at this point, you may want to turn this on and ensure it's displaying on the MFD correctly. Speaking of the MFD, let's just jump over there, and again, just as we're on the subject of TCAS, you can see that is enabled with these little spikes that are sticking off the inner ring here. You can see TA only is on, and above altitude reporting is on as well, so that is looking good. Next, we'll make sure that the nav source here is selected to FMS1, so you can actually change your nav source by using this knob. We're going to make sure that's on FMS1 for this flight, and that is good. We'll make sure this is set up as we want it. 40-mile range is good for this tutorial, and this format is correct as well. So that is all looking good. That is now... Sorry, we've just got one more item to check. We'll just make sure we go over to the ICAS displays. We'll check the crew alert in system, make sure nothing is displayed here. And everything is looking good. Everything is as expected. And we'll just box these items as well. Again, this is preference if you want to do that. It just makes it look nice and clean. So we're going to leave it at that. We'll have our legs page open there as well. Okay, so we are now going to taxi onto the runway and take off. Now, everything tends to happen very, very quickly here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and explain everything as we go up as best as I can do. If I feel like I miss anything, I will actually play the video again and just explain everything as we go through it a second time. However, I will try to show you things as we go up, and I would advise you to read through the normal takeoff sequence and callouts in the manual at this stage and review the diagram. The diagram is an extremely good summary of how you would initiate a takeoff in this aircraft. If you've flown the CJ4 in this simulator, you may be familiar with this kind of takeoff sequence. Basically, what we're going to do is apply takeoff thrust. We're then going to rotate at VR. Gear is going to come up once we've verified positive rate on the vertical speed indicator and our altitude is increasing. At V2 plus 10, we'll activate speed mode, and then we'll go to nav mode as well. We'll then activate the autopilot no earlier than 600 feet above ground level, and then we'll want to be looking at trying to accelerate from that point at when we reach 1,000 foot above ground level. We'll then bring the thrust levers back to the climb detent and then accelerate further to 250 knots. So let's get underway then. Alright, just making sure we've got the correct lights on and everything is looking good. Alright, let's release that parking brake and give a bit of thrust. As we're on a little bit of an uphill gradient here, we'll just need to give it a bit of power to get up this little hill. To reduce workload in the air as well, we might as well just set our altitude here to our cruising altitude of 18,000 feet or flight level 180. And now that we're on the runway, let's activate the takeoff mode on the PFD. Obviously we want to make sure the flight directors are on. And we're just going to brake down to a stop here. Now, you can activate the takeoff mode one of two ways. I'm just going to hold it on the toe brakes here. You can either click this little button here, or Aerosoft have put in a nice little secret click spot for us right here. So you can actually click this top screw and that will activate the takeoff mode. As you can see, takeoff is now on the annunciators here, and you'll see the flight director has now pitched up for our target speed. You can also bind this button to a controller if you wish, and you want to look through the controls menu and search for auto throttle to GA, and you can bind that to your throttle quadrant if you wish. I have a TCA quadrant, so I actually bound that to the what would be the auto throttle button normally on an Airbus. Okay, so we are clear for takeoff. Let's get underway. So I'm going to advance the throttle levers to around about 60% here and slowly release the brakes there. That's stabilized, and we're going to go up to the toga detent. Toga is selected and we are good to go. $80 knots. V1 and rotate. Positive rate and gear up. Let's select speed mode, and as well as nav mode. And just trying to follow those flight directors there. And we're now going to activate the autopilot. We can bring our flaps up as we are now approaching 200 knots. We'll make sure we set 200 as our speed here. And we might as well go all the way up to 250. And we'll bring the thrust levers back to the climb detent. Okay. We're looking good. That was a pretty good departure. I don't think I actually need to rewind the video and go back to tell you anything. Hopefully that all made sense. We managed to follow everything pretty much as explained in the manual there. And with practice, I'm sure you guys will get it spot on as well. So we've passed through 6,000 feet now, which is our transition altitude. You can see the altimeter is flashing here. So let's click on the barometer knob and set that to standard at 1013. Okay, great stuff. So a nice departure there. We are now inbound Warburg VOR. You can see here Warburg is the next waypoint as indicated on both the panel above the map here, and you can see it on the map. You can also see on the left on the PFD the distance indicated also, along with the DME hold we used for the Paderborn VOR. Okay, so let's do a climb check then. We're past through 10,000 feet now. So let's head over to the overhead panel and we can turn off the seatbelt signs now. We'll also turn off the crossflow auto overrides. We'll double check our bleed source is still set to both engines. We'll make sure the APU is powered down. And we can come down here and turn the thrust reversers to disarmed. We'll also check our IceCast displays and make sure there's no extra messages that have appeared. As you can see, our messages here are still boxed, so nothing else has appeared there, and there's nothing here on the cast display. What we can do now is we can also just go down to our radios and we can set these both to auto, as we no longer need the navigation to the VOR. Now that we've passed through 10,000 feet as well, we can increase our climb speed. We'll increase this to 290 knots.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now serving sandwiches.
Sandwiches are now being served, guys. I hope you enjoy. As you can see, 290 is now the selected speed and we are now climbing up. We no longer need this DME hold as well, so we can come down here and just select this off and it will disappear from both here and on the PFD. We no longer need the Warburg VOR bearing needle, so we'll turn that one off as well. And that is looking good. Everything is nice and clean. Sorry, we'll just keep cycling through and there we go, it's now off. Okay, so we'll just complete our climb out to our cruising altitude here. You can see now from the chime, or the chord that you heard, we're now approaching 18,000 feet. So we want to get ready to start moving our throttles back. And as you can see, we've already started to gain speed. Our cruising speed for today is 300 knots. So we just want to make sure that we are reaching that speed and then cruising at it. So we've still got a slight climb on here and it's captured the altitude and we're going to level off momentarily. As you can see, the closer we come to the level off, the quicker we're going. So I'm just moving those handles back. And that is looking about good. Let's center our heading bug. And we'll set our speed here at 300. Okay. So that is looking good. We're just over 300 knots. But that seems okay for me. We're at about 73, just over 73, and well, nearly 74 N1. And we're cruising along at 300 knots. Okay, so I am going to leave it there for this video. That's been quite a lot of information. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed. What we're going to do in the next video is we are going to cover the en route section of the tutorial. We're going to prepare for our descent and arrival into Munich. And we are going to start the descent. So I hope you guys have enjoyed once again. Let me know what you think by hitting the thumbs up or down button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for more CRJ content. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video. Thank you again, and bye for now.